Let's go to Lindsey Singer, though, not keep her waiting any longer. Lindsey, welcome. How are you?
I'm great. Nice to talk to you.
Thanks for joining us. We are talking about gas and oil and some of the things going on legislatively right now, which we're doing our best to give people awareness to what's going on there to make sure the Democrats don't kill our state and we lose 30% of our economy.
Yeah, so I wanted to point out, I don't know if you've already talked about this, but some of the people that have come out against it, aside from the 1,000-plus people who showed up at the Capitol to protest, Ken Salazar, who's a former Democrat U.S. Senator. He's also an Interior Secretary under Obama. Mm-hmm. He came out against it. DJ Friednash, who's a former Hickenlooper Chief of Staff. And the Denver Post came out against it, mostly because of the way they're doing the procedure. But still, that's a lot of opposition.
I'm actually shocked that we've got Democrats saying don't shut oil and gas down in Colorado. I mean, basically, these are, and I'll be careful how I say this, but these are more intelligent Democrats that understand what's at stake here.
Yeah, well, I'd say this is why the procedure was rushed so much. I mean, the bill was introduced at 5 p.m. on a Friday afternoon.
Yep.
And then Tuesday afternoon, the committee hearing was scheduled. So, but in that time, over 1,000 people who support energy jobs in Colorado, support the funding that goes to education and our economy that come from oil and gas, they showed up at the Capitol. 395 people testified. I think the majority of that was against. But I know that some of it was mixed. But it was 12 hours of testimony, and they voted in the middle of the night and just passed it on party lines. But I think this is why it was rushed, is because the Democrats in the legislature didn't want this public opinion to have time to come out before it made its way through.
Got it. Okay, so thought process. Will this go through, pass all the way? I mean, there's no guarantees that it will, but let's say that it passes the House and the Senate. Does Polis sign it?
I believe he does, because he came out at a press conference with the Democrat leadership that he supported. This was, part of his brainchild as well. So, and they did that press conference before the bill was introduced. I believe he will support it.
He's been for setbacks forever.
Even though somebody like Ken Salazar says no.
Yeah, I think he does support it. He had to know. He knows Ken Salazar's position. I mean, they're close. Ken campaigned for him. This is maybe the one issue they disagree on, but I think he goes through with it.
I just want to say, Lindsey, I think if Polis doesn't sign it, would he lose some of his voter base? Because so much of his campaign was based off of climate change, and redoing some of this. So I think he would be afraid not to sign it because he would lose voters.
Oh, yeah. And so it puts him in a tough position. Mm-hmm. And the way that he's sort of splitting with the Democrat leadership on a number of things, this maybe was his way of compromising on this. He'll support. I mean, he's always been, like you said, a supporter of setbacks, but he'll do this and they'll give him the pre-K funding. So there's been some disagreements on where money should go. And I think maybe there's some behind the scenes stuff happening.
Okay, so if this bill actually passes, which the measure gives more regulatory power to the State Oil and Gas Conservation Commission, by the way, not to be confused with the actual State and Oil Gas Commission, but the Conservation Commission, two separate bodies, by the way. What happens if that takes place, Lindsey?
Well, I think things get a lot more strict. I think the rules are about certain people that have to get put on that commission. And it shifts the focus away from finding a balance with the economy onto just the environmental, health and safety concerns, which really become subjective to the localities. And something that's in this bill that hasn't gotten a lot of publicity is that a section near the end basically says that, yes, we're giving local control, but if those localities, for example, Weld County, aren't as strict as the state standards, they have to go by the state standards. So then local control goes out the window. It's like, unless you're as extreme or more extreme as the state standards, your opinion doesn't matter. So
what would happen then is we would allow towns like Boulder and Lafayette, who have both put basically drilling moratoriums on, to continue to do so, thereby taking money out of royalty owners' pockets.
Correct.
Or, mineral right owners' pockets.
Yeah, and that commission that she was talking about, right now it has 3 representatives from oil and gas on it. It will be reduced to 1 representative from oil
Oh, boy.
and
So
gas.
that guy might as well not show up.
Yeah.
Or gal.
Yeah.
That person might as well just not show up.
Yeah, and so Ken Salazar said in an op-ed he wrote in the Denver Post that this whole proposal is driven by a Boulder view of the world, which couldn't be more. The 2 people who introduced the bill are from Boulder. Jared Polis is from Boulder. I mean, that just couldn't be more hitting the nail on the head.
Yeah, great way to say it. So basically, it takes a Boulder view of oil and gas and foists it on all of the people of Colorado across the state.
Yep.
Totally the wrong way to do it.
On a note of positivity, I would say that having so many people show up at the Capitol and to testify and just to be at that rally that was in front of the Capitol, and those pictures go around, and I think it really sends a message, even if we don't hear it immediately right now. I think people see that, and they see that there's opposition and that the legislature is pushing it through anyway. And, I think that this can inspire some people, or at least educate them to know what's going on and to take note.
Okay. Any conversation internally with oil and gas where you've heard rumors of, folks leaving, or are they in a wait-and-see mode? What's the thought process there?
I think that people, I've heard that they're thinking of leaving. There's no action right now, but I mean, how could they not be upending? But it gives much more power to those who deal in the renewable energy. So, we'll just see a power shift there. And states like Texas, where oil and gas is welcome with open arms, they'll probably head that way.
I'm afraid that you are probably correct. So here's the next question, which we've talked about as well. In fact, there's a website, join.recallcolorado.org, where they're actually trying to start an initiative where some of these bad actors, some of these bad Democrats that will not listen, they're just going to try to recall them. What are your thoughts there?
I think anything that people can do in this position, we don't have power in the legislature as Republicans. We don't have the governor's office. So anything we can do to send a message and to make our voices heard is a positive thing in the long run.
Fully agreed. All right, what else you got for us, Lindsey?
So we're looking at some big issues that are still coming. I heard the paid family leave bill that we've been waiting for might get dropped next week or possibly tomorrow. Then we're still waiting on full-day kindergarten and potentially transportation funding. So we're halfway through the legislature, and we still have some of those really big issues to come. One thing that hasn't dropped yet, but has sort of been, there was a story written about it this week, is that the Democrat leadership is talking about doing a referendum C type deal. And just quickly for people who don't know what that is, between 2005 and 2010, the voters approved giving revenue that was above the Tabor cap back to the state to sort of fill some funding gaps. So it barely passed the voters, and it passed on the promise of giving K-12 education, higher education, and health care that excess funding. But that didn't happen. It didn't actually go to those places. I think spending in areas other than those places grew by 28%, and that was more than 2 times as much as education and healthcare spending. So voters saw that. I don't think that it would fly again if they get another referendum C type thing on the ballot because of how miserably they handled it last time. But we're watching that.
Okay. All right. Lindsey, as always, really appreciate it. Website where folks can learn more about what you guys have going on.
It is coloradorisingaction.org.
Appreciate it very much, Lindsey. Talk to you next week.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. In closing,